Mark Skaar on 103.7 The Fox. This is the Skaar Kaard, and I'm proud to welcome in Mr. Andy Powell from Wishbone Ash. Andy, how are you? Welcome.
I'm well. It's a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Yeah, and of course, you're coming to our neighborhood in mid-July, the Historic Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa. I'm sure over in England that you spent a lot of time as a young lad listening to the likes of Buddy Holly.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, those kind of people were, the backdrop of me wanting to learn guitar. And because, of course, Buddy's songs were simple in construction, and it was great when you were learning the guitar to pick up those songs. And I've got an interesting story about Buddy Holly, actually. I've never met him, of course, but I did go to a party that Paul McCartney threw at a club in London called the Peppermint Park Club, and it was a celebration to celebrate the fact that he had just bought the entire Buddy Holly song catalogue, which is now obviously in the possession of Sir Paul McCartney. And the evening was tinged with sadness. It was a fun event, but I had been sitting at a table with Keith Moon, who was also there, and very, very sadly, it was the night that Keith actually passed away after the party. So Buddy Holly, Keith Moon, Paul McCartney, it's all kind of intertwined in my memory. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The music of people like Buddy definitely formed the backdrop of my sort of life as a teenager. Well, late 50s, early 60s.
Andy, I like to ask everybody, what did you do during the pandemic?
I went fishing. I basically called it, and I think I called it right, that it would be a 5-year deal. And I pretty much thought that it would be very difficult to pick things up again if it went on so long. So I started to do things from a perspective of just retiring from the music business, and I did a lot of walking. We live in the countryside, so it's all country pursuits, and I got into fishing in a big way. I bought kayak, I was going out in the lakes, I was doing paddleboarding, I was doing all these kind of fitness things and fun things, that you can do in the country. So I live up in New England area. And once I'd done about a year of that, and there was talk about scheduling the shows, continually rescheduling all the time, and sort of had to do a turnaround and figure out how we could resume. So I completely changed my outlook. But there was a point, I think it was the same for everybody, where we were like, well, this is it. We can't do a thing about it. So let's make good on the situation as it is right now. And that's what I did. I did all those kind of things. And I just did a lot of thinking. I listened to a lot of music. I set up a Patreon account, which is where one of these online platforms to connect with fans and people that in a different way online, And I kept busy and I kept positive. Then there came that point where we can do a tour. And last year we did a month-long tour of Britain, and now we're doing this 2-month tour of America, which is unbelievable. So, it turned around on me. But I think, we're going to go through some other roller coaster rides with COVID. I don't think we're out of the woods yet, but this is where we're at right now. So it's really 1 week, 1 month at a time for us.
Talking with Andy Powell from Wishbone Ash on the Skaar Kaard. You were just on a cruise. Did you ever think back in the early 1970s that you'd be playing a gig on a ship?
Well, we've reached that time of life where my generation goes cruising. And if you're a rock fan, you want the kind of cruise that you want. And these cruises have just become super popular. And, there's blues cruises, there's metal cruises. We were on the Cruise to the Edge, which is more of a progressive rock cruise. Mm-hmm. And I have to say, no, I never thought that would be part of my career. But it was very enjoyable. Of course, you're on a ship with about 3,000 or 4,000 like-minded souls and some great musicians I met, and it's just a lot of fun actually. Also, I'm not a kind of person that would choose or think about going on a cruise, but I have to say it was a lot of fun, and it was a week spent just enjoying music and relaxing at the same time and meeting some really cool people actually. It's really good.
Argus just turned 50. Can you believe it?
Mind-blowing. Yeah, I mean, that's been a big thing that we're kind of celebrating, and I think when we were recording that album, none of us could have thought that the music game, as we called it, would last any longer than, let's say, perhaps 5 years, in fact. But it impacted the culture so deeply with this baby boomer generation that it has, this kind of music has formed the backdrop to the culture. And of course, back in the day, rock stars and the rock culture impacted everything, advertising, movies, you name it. I mean, now it's a smaller part of the whole thing. But still, it had a massive, if you think about it, a massive effect. And to be a part of that, and to have a classic album that made it to the top of the charts, particularly in the UK, and to have it hang around and have an impact where people, it formed the backdrop to a lot of people's lives. I mean, those albums, we can all mention the top 5 albums that we listened to when we were in our early 20s, for example, or late teens. Mm-hmm. And to have participated in an album like that was one of those classic albums, you just can't beat it. I mean, it's like, it gives you a great sense of belonging. And I love that about the Argus album. And
I think you've been playing it front to back, haven't you?
Yeah, on certain select dates on this tour, we have been featuring it, and it forms, front to back. It forms part of the show. We'll do like a 2-hour show, and it forms half of that show. And people love it. They just, I stand on stage, and I look out into the audience. I see people literally eyes glazing over, and they're going back because you're playing the songs in sequence, and that's the way that we used to listen to long playing records back in the day. It wasn't this kind of thing where you just randomly select tracks like on Spotify or whatever it is. And so it works very well in that sense. It's a cool thing to do. Yeah, very, very, very much enjoying it.
Talking to Andy Powell from Wishbone Ash, there is an upcoming 10 LP limited edition box set called Living Proof, and Andy, it's got some early gigs on it.
Yeah, well, we're also in that phase where people are mining the past, and they're mining these recordings that are out there that haven't seen the light of day before. So yeah, that box set you just mentioned is full of those recordings that have never been put together in one package before, and that also have never been heard. And it's a second box set. We did a box set about 2 or 3 years ago, which was a 32 CD retrospective. Again, the full catalogue, but also a catalogue of live performances, different live performances that hadn't been heard. So this is what's going on right now. And that will be coming out, I think it's in the fall sometime. It's on Madfish Records. And that's a 10-album package, yeah, exactly.
And earlier you talked about Paul McCartney and Keith Moon, and of course you referenced that in your book, which, by the way, I am now reading.
Oh, thank you.
And it's called Eyes Wide Open, True Tales of a Wishbone Ash Warrior, and I think you put it out, Andy, in about, 2015?
Somewhere around that, yeah. Yeah, it's still pretty current. I mean, because, we had a new album since then, Coat of Arms. But yeah, it was, I just felt that the time was right to put the book together. And, you need to wait for a certain point in time where you feel you've really lived a life. And it's very difficult to write a book like that when you're younger, but obviously so many stories and so much water under the bridge. And I lived through, one of the greatest periods of popular culture. And, the book is full of stories. My road tales and my kind of philosophies, what I learned from the whole thing. And, it was very, very satisfying to do. And it was hard to do, actually. I've done something like 30 studio albums in my life, and a lot of DVDs and compilations and live recordings. But writing a book, do it in an objective manner where you're kind of looking at your life and trying to be objective about it and learn some lessons from it. It was very cathartic and not too easy to do, but very rewarding from a creative standpoint.
About how long did it take, Andy, to kind of put the whole thing together? Okay.
It took me a year. I worked with a fellow, a writer, actually. It wasn't ghostwritten. The way we did it was, he's kind of a student of popular culture, Colin Harper, and he's written many books on many subjects, many of them music. And I would, on my trips across to Europe, I would stop off in Dublin and meet him in Ireland where he lived. And he just interviewed me. And so he basically transcribed a lot of those interviews. And then also I wrote long-handed certain chapters myself, which were a little bit more personal in my words. But it was all my words, basically. And then from time to time, he would kind of reference the things I was talking about and sync them into what was going on at the time, so they had relevance, and you could get a better sense of the timeline. But he was very good with the timeline itself, which I mean, if you lived through the 70s and you can remember it, then they say you weren't there, And it was a little bit like that for me, trying to get the events in order and the correct sequence, So he was very helpful in that regard, and we really enjoyed doing it, actually, together. It was a lot of fun. And I think that was the other thing about it. It wasn't... There were moments when it was stressful, getting things right, but it was an enjoyable experience. That's absolutely true.
Talking to Andy Powell of Wishbone Ash, you mentioned Coat of Arms came out a couple of years ago, and we've had the luxury of playing some of it here on our very radio show, and we enjoyed it very much.
Yeah, well, the thing about that was we released it just prior to COVID, so we really weren't able to give it the promotion on the road that we would have preferred to. So some people are just discovering it, but it's been sort of delayed by COVID. But we were very happy to make that album.
And about a week after you see us, Andy, my understanding is on July 22nd, you're going to be recording a live album.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, we played this venue up in Pauling in New York State, close to where I live, actually. And it was set up by Daryl Hall of Daryl Hall and Oates. And he had this successful internet show, really, which was called Daryl's House. Mm-hmm. And then it was so successful that where he would have guest artists come along and play at his house, and he played with them. And you can go on the internet, on YouTube, and see those. But he set up a club there, and it's called Daryl's House Club. And it has a superb sound in the room. The gentleman that renovated the club and set it up, he set it up for musicians, and everyone that plays there loves it because it's a lot of wood in there, a lot of soft surfaces, and the sound system is absolutely fantastic. And there's great video as well with it. So we're going to go in there, we're going to re-record the Live Dates album, which was released in, I think, 1973, and we're going to record those songs just as we're playing the August set right now. And yeah, it's going to be a fun thing, though. It's really, I think it'll be a bit of an occasion. Fans will make him a bit of a pilgrimage to come there and see us. And I think that it's really paying homage to the past, really. Because Live Date, the songs on that album itself, it was actually the biggest selling record that we had, even bigger than the Argus album. And the reason being that there just weren't that many bands recording live albums. It was a fairly new thing in the early 70s. Of course, you had many jazz records being made that were live. But the recording technology got better, and we were able to record live albums. So we're going to recreate those times, really.
Fantastic. Andy, if people want to find more, keep in touch with you through Wishbone Ash, all the social media circles, how can they best do that?
Well, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, of course, and the website is wishboneash.com. There are a bunch of Wishbone Ash Facebook sites, but you'll see ours is the one with the most members, and that's probably the go-to place where most daily news is posted by the band, I would say, because we're just continually posting stuff on that site. But the website is the overview. You can go there and you find out all the tour dates and you get the bigger items of news. But and then I would encourage people to go to my Patreon site. That's patreon.com/Andy Powell. And there you can really take a deep dive into my world within the band. And there are 4 tiers on that. And you can join and just get basically my thoughts for the day or my thoughts for that month and of the observations that I make about being a touring and traveling musician. And you can go all the way up to one-on-one guitar lessons with me. You can get into vocalizing and how we do that and producing records, and you can really take a deep dive into the history of the band and those kind of vignettes and snapshots behind the scenes, which I know people love now. I mean, that's what social media has done. It's opened the world of musicians, which, I mean, to many extents was it's a private world in a way, but now everything is, it's all access, total access now. So Patreon is great for that. And, the idea of being with Patreon is like you, the participant, is a patron. of the band and the arts, and you can go on any level. There's 4 tiers to it, and if you go to, as I say, patreon.com/Andy Powell, it might be something that would interest you. If you like to troll around and look at YouTube and this kind of thing, this is a much more intensive experience.
Andy, thank you. We're looking forward to seeing you at the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa on Thursday, July 14th. It's a pleasure talking to you, and all the best going forward.
Thanks so much, Mark. It's a pleasure, and we're really looking forward to getting back to the Surf Ballroom. I mean, it is a great room, and as you say, so much history there, and it's got to be done. It's been a goodly number of years since we've been there, so totally looking forward to that.
For Andy Powell from Wishbone Ash, I'm Mark Skaar. This is a Skaar Kaard on 103.7 The Fox.